Which of the following forms of referral fees, compensation, consideration, or benefit earned when issuing a recommendation should most likely be disclosed? A. Only cash considerations. B. Only considerations in the form of cash or soft dollars. Or C. Considerations in the form of cash, soft dollars, or in kind. We're going to go with answer C. It's always good to disclose more and disclose everything, just in case there are certain conflicts of interest. So we're either doing cash or soft dollars, or cash, soft dollars, or in kind. Under these scenarios, we want to go with the most safe answer or thing, and so we should disclose all three of these. Answer C. Chloe Vendetti, CFA, is a business strategist at WQS Investments, an investment firm known for hiring investment managers who have the CFA designation or candidates. Due to this, Chloe claims that her firm offers superior returns. That's a big no-no. Compared to other firms in the industry in a recent press statement. You cannot do that relative to the CFA designation, so we do have a violation here. Historically, the firm has offered its clients above average returns. Under the CFA Institute Code and Standards, Chloe's claim did not violate, or did violate. Answer C. We can see that answer C tries to give a justification because they have historical returns above average. They can say that. You still can't say this because you're guaranteeing that that's going to continue in the future. And we all know that past performance is not indicative of future results. Answer C. Dan Walton, CFA, is a supervisor of a research analyst team at Pioneer Investing. Walton noticed that Eva Peters developed a new model and started trading based on the new model without testing it. Walton asked Peters to stop trading immediately. When Walton inquired further into the situation, he realized that the company has no policy or guidelines for testing new models. So at first it sounded like Eva Peters might have been violating here, but then there's no guidelines or policy for testing those new models, so it sounds like she's not actually out of line. What is the most appropriate action to be taken by Walton in this situation? A. Walton should fire Peters for not testing the model. It's kind of hard to do that if there's no policy or compliance backing up him firing her for that. There's no policy that she didn't follow. B. Walton should report Peters to the compliance team. Again, there's nothing really to report on. There was no guideline that wasn't followed or rule that was broken. There was no guidance or rules on it. So it's hard to justify doing either of these, really. And then C. Walton should encourage the firm to develop guidelines for the testing of new models. Sounds like our best answer and would help solve these types of problems going forward. Answer C. Ignacio Dawson is an investment advisor at Larson Securities Incorporated. Hubert Padilla, a high net worth client, offered Dawson a 2% profit sharing each year on achieving a return above 20, to which Dawson agrees. When Padilla asked about brokerage, Dawson advises Padilla to shift his brokerage towards Willis Brokers as they are the best in town in terms of pricing and service quality. When Padilla left, Dawson wrote an email to his employer regarding his compensation arrangement with Padilla. The next day, Dawson received a cash check in the name of Larson Securities from Willis Brokers for introducing the new client to them. Dawson has most likely violated standard 4B, additional compensation arrangements by A. Failing to disclose Padilla about Larson's arrangement with Willis Brokers. That certainly is a violation and could be our answer. Even though they have the best pricing and service quality, that arrangement should still be disclosed to the client, Padilla. B. Accepting Padilla's offer before obtaining permission from his employer. This could also be a violation as well. He received this 2%, he agrees to it, but his employer hasn't necessarily signed off on this, and this could create a huge conflict of interest. So he should get employer permission before this. So let's look at C, failing to disclose Padilla regarding his firm's arrangement with Willis. That's the same as A, so that's good so far. And failing to disclose his profit-sharing arrangement prior to obtaining consent from his employer. That's the same as B. So since we're leaning towards A and B both being right, we can just go with answer C since that includes both those answers. Isan Alma CFA has been managing the portfolio of Mrs. Sainem for the past year. Almas was able to earn good returns for Mrs. Sainem and requested that Mrs. Sainem tell her friends about the above average returns that she could earn on her portfolio. Is Almas most likely in violation of Standard 3D performance presentation? So it's not necessarily bad for him to ask for recommendations. However, he's only been managing the portfolio for the past year, and to ask her to tell them about the above average returns with only a 1-year track record definitely seems like we're probably violating here. So we've got no, Almas is not violating the standard. I think we could probably rule that out. And for B and C, we've got yes for different reasons. So let's see what we're going to pick here. Almas is violating the standard as the message does not pass the test of completeness. This would fall under this kind of 1-year track record here. We can't really claim above average returns if we have just a 1-year track record. It's too short of a time period. And then for C, Almas is violating the standard as she cannot request that her client talk about the portfolio performance to others. Again, I think this is okay to ask them to give you referrals or talk to your friends about it, but telling them to tell them about the above average returns and only having a 1-year track record is where this kind of falls off the rails. So this is going to fall more under B, this test of completeness. Which of the following is least likely expected from a member with fiduciary responsibility for a pension plan? So least likely, 2 of these will be expected and 1 will not. A, the member should always act in the interest of plan participants. We can rule that out since that is what the fiduciary responsibility is to the pension plan, to act in their best interest. B, the member should make judgments from the perspective of the total portfolio. We can rule that out as well, since this is also a fiduciary responsibility and part of that for the pension plan. We need to make judgments and decisions based on the overall portfolio, not just individual securities. And then C, in the case of a proxy fight, the members should provide support to the sponsor's management. We can rule that out. They can provide support to the sponsor's management if that's the best thing for the clients, but under the proxy fight, they should be doing what's best for the pension plan, not management. Answer C. Jonna Reynolds took the CFA Level I exam last week. She signed the CFA Institute pledge, and though she has obeyed all provisions related to exam rules, however, as she was exiting the exam room, a proctor heard Reynolds state to another candidate, This exam had nothing to do with the CFA practice questions. For this reason, the exam proctor reported Reynolds for violating Standard 7A, conduct as participants in CFA Institute programs. Has Reynolds violated Standard 7A, conduct as participants in CFA Institute programs? So the key thing here is you're allowed to state your negative opinion. So she's saying that this exam had nothing to do with the practice questions, but we can't state specifics about what was on the exam. So if she said something more specific like the derivatives questions had no formulas on the Black-Scholes model or something like that, that was very specific in talking about what was on the exam, then this would start to turn into a violation. But for the reason that it's more vague and it's just negative, I'm leaning more so towards no, this is not a violation. Let's read the full answers though. So no, because Standard 7A, conduct as participants in the program, allows for negative opinions to be expressed by members and candidates. That checks out. Yes, it's a violation because conduct as participants in CFA Institute program disallows candidates from speaking to one another for at least 12 hours after the exam. That's not a rule. So we can rule that out. And then C, yes, because Standard 7A, conduct as participants in CFA Institute programs, clearly states that members and candidates cannot disparage the reputation of the CFA Institute by stating a negative opinion. You certainly can state your negative opinion, so that confidently leads us back to answer A. Marco Trielli, CFA, works for a large bank in New York City. He has recently been arrested for participating in a nonviolent protest against capitalism. Has Trielli most likely violated any CFA Institute code and standards? A, yes, Trielli has violated standard duties to employer. Yes, we violated related to standard 1D misconduct. Or C, no, Trielli has not violated any CFA Institute code and standards. So this one is going to be answer C. For a nonviolent protest, even though they were arrested. The code and standards is more so related to your professional reputation. So for something like a nonviolent protest, it's likely not going to damage your reputation. Once you started committing more serious crimes or doing things like that were related to theft or dishonesty or deceit, that would certainly start to reflect poorly on your professional reputation. And that's when you're more so going to be violating these standards here on duties to employer and misconduct and whatnot. Answer C. Laura Haldon, CFA, has worked for a full-service brokerage firm. She recently met with a client and informed them that her firm could provide the services they need after understanding all the requirements. Has Haldon most likely violated Standard 1C misrepresentation given the information above? A. Yes, Haldon cannot make such commitments. B. No, Haldon is not in violation as this was only oral communication. Or C. No, Haldon is not in violation of her commitment if her commitment was based on facts. So she met with a client, told them about their services, and then understood all the requirements for the client. I think that under this scenario, we're not misrepresenting anything. We had a good conversation with the client. We figured out what their goals and everything were. So that rules out this being a violation. So then B, is this not a violation because it was only oral communication, or it's not a violation if the commitment was based on facts? Oral communication has nothing to do with it. It's more so, it would become a violation here if we misrepresented what our services were, or if we didn't actually understand what the client needed before signing them up for the services. So since we understood the requirements, had a good conversation about the services provided, this is likely not a violation because we are under the understanding that this commitment is based on the facts of that conversation. Answer C. Ali Nabil, CFA, covers the real estate sector of the Middle East Emaar Group, a real estate company in Dubai. Has gotten a few phone calls from Nabil, who is trying to estimate the company's value. Emaar runs 878 hotels in Dubai and recently offered a trip to Dubai and stay at 878 at Emaar Group's expense. Sorry, this is 878 hotel, not 878 hotels. Which of the following is the most appropriate action that Nabil should take not to violate any CFA Institute code and standards? So the main thing we're looking at here is this analyst wants to visit this group, and the real estate group wants to pay for their expense to come there. And so this could create a conflict of interest, certainly, if they're paying for Ali Nabil to come to this nice hotel in Dubai, and that's likely going to cloud their judgment if they're covering that expense. So what should we do under that scenario? Should we A, decline the offer? That sounds like a good option. If we really want to visit, it would probably be best to cover it on our own dime or have our own company cover it rather than having the real estate company cover this, because that does start to cloud our independence and objectivity. B, Ali should accept the offer and mention it in his research report. That could be a good option, but I think declining the offer would be better. And then C, accept the offer and inform his supervisor about the offer. If you're going to accept it, you should certainly get permission before. And so that's going to lead us still back to A, declining the offer is going to be our best action.